Probably a lot of us have got the old definition that we learned either in school or Sunday school in our heads, that they are earthly stories with a heavenly meaning, which is not in some ways a bad definition. The word in Greek, parabole, one of the easiest Greek words to remember. Bole means throwing and para means alongside. And so in the parables, Jesus is throwing alongside two very different ideas, two very different things, and inviting us to often compare them and sometimes to contrast them. It's a placing alongside of two things to gain a deeper understanding. And in the parables, we see Jesus doing this, don't we? Whether it's a woman searching for one lost coin, or a shepherd searching for one lost sheep, or a father waiting patiently for one lost son. Jesus places those images, very vivid images, alongside that question of what if you're the lost thing? What if you're lost? And what if God is passionately and patiently trying to find you, trying to reach you, trying to welcome you? Jesus' parables invite us into that kind of dialogue, into that kind of exploration. What if God is like that? What if the kingdom is like this? I think there's a whole bunch of reasons. I think they're so visual, aren't they? Even things that aren't quite parables but invite us to compare and contrast things, like just saying like a camel through the eye of a needle. That's how hard it is for those who are rich to enter the kingdom. That's unforgettable. A camel through the eye of a needle. They're just so visual, and visual things stick longer, don't they, in the mind. There's also the emotional engagement. You start to be drawn into the stories of Jesus. You start to care. So like the Good Samaritan, that's a story about being invited deeper into compassion and to care about the suffering of others and the injustice that we see in the world. But we can all say that we want to be those kind of people. But the story invites us into a specific situation and asks us to care about one person that was beaten up and left for dead. And I love the definition that the parables of Jesus are like a ticking time bomb that he leaves in the minds of those who listen and those who read them. Next time we pass somebody in need, that ticking time bomb, I say I want to be a good neighbour to people. I want to be someone who cares about suffering and injustice. Well, here it is. Here's one person. Now, will I be the kind of person that just walks past and makes excuses, or will I stop and risk and care? So yeah, there's the visual, the fact that they live there like a ticking time bomb, and then there's the emotional engagement. We're drawn in. But perhaps deeper than that, I think one of the biggest reasons Jesus uses stories is because of who we are. We love stories, whether they are stories we read at bedtime to our kids or stories that we watch. The storytelling industry now might be far more advanced than ever before, and we watch stories in all kinds of different ways now, engage with them in all kinds of different ways. But at our core, we're a storytelling people, and our culture is full of stories. It's true on a big level, it's true on a small scale. To understand who I am and the world around me and my response to it, we tell stories, don't we? And the stories that we tell somehow illustrate and highlight one part of who we are and what we believe the world to be like. There's a brilliant book written a few years ago by a guy called Jonas Sachs called Winning the Story Wars. And his whole point is that politicians understand this, the media understand this, that the biggest stories that we tell ourselves frame our experience of things. So for some people, our journey, for example, through COVID, if you tell that as part of the British response to crisis and attack, and almost frame it in sort of Second World War terms. That elicit a sort of a noble response to it, that this isn't about my rights as an individual, this is about our responsibility as a society, as a community, to protect the most vulnerable. But for other people, COVID forms part of a very different kind of story, a story of governments and control and conspiracy, and a story of distrust of experts. And if that's your largest story, then COVID is one chapter of a very different kind, and that elicits a very different kind of response. And so Jonas Sachs is right. The people who win, if you like, the hearts and minds are those who tell the better stories, the stories that are more cohesive and elicit a bigger response. And the stories of Jesus really invite us out of all our little stories that we'd tell about ourselves and the kind of people we are, the kind of families we're from, the kind of communities, the nation, all that kind of stuff. It invites us out of that into the bigger story of the kingdom of God. I mean, how many of the parables start with Jesus saying, to what shall I compare the kingdom of God? What's it like? He's very deliberately doing this, and inviting us to see the unfolding drama of God's story, of God's love story with us and with his world, and asking, where's your place in this story? Are you the one who falls into the embrace, the waiting arms of the Father, or are you outside of that party because you don't have to be? And there's another story, and there's another way, and that for me is the deeper reason of why Jesus tells stories. They mean different things. Jesus is a master storyteller. In fact, if you look up the word parable in 9 out of 10 dictionaries, you'll have Jesus listed as the primary example of using this way of understanding the world, of teaching. Jesus loved to tell stories, but having said that, he's not speaking in riddles. They do mean something. There's one parable, isn't there? The parable of the good soil, the parable of the sower, where Jesus does unpick it with the disciples later and shows them piece by piece what things mean. And so there's a decoding process for us. Having said that, Jesus only does that with one parable, so I do think the parable of the sower is quite unique. Usually the parables are told in response to one question: who is my neighbour? Or one situation, like when Simon the Pharisee is judging the woman that's weeping at Jesus' feet, and Jesus tells a story to highlight the fact that Simon hasn't seen this woman at all. They're told in response to one issue, and so most of the parables are beautifully and vividly and emotionally and amazingly making one point. But when you see that one point, you can't unsee it. It's the time bomb that goes off and goes off and goes off, and invites us and challenges us and prompts us and encourages us deeper into the story of God. So I'm really excited about launching this Storyteller series. It's going to be starting this Sunday morning at Bethel, the 3rd of October. Also, small groups as they are restarting in this season and in this term. Not that they ever stopped, but starting a new term together. They're going to be looking at the parables using a study guide just simply called Parables Communicating God on Earth. Some of those are going to be meeting still online. Others are hiring the lounge here or the centre, so they've got a bit more space to spread out. Others are small enough and have big enough houses to meet safely that way. And I'd love to invite you to engage with the stories of Jesus, because we often call Jesus, don't we, the author of life. or the author of our salvation. And that's true in a big way, but it's also true in a specific way, that Jesus is looking to write a story in your life and in my life. And if you've still got breath in your lungs, then that story's not finished yet. And one of the ways that Jesus wants to continue that story is through these stories, is through inviting us deeper into the drama of God. And I'd love you to be part of it. So please join us on Sundays. If you want to join us in person, then there's no need to book unless you want a socially distanced space, then we can provide you with that. If you'd love to be part of one of the small groups, please do be in touch. We'd love to connect you in that way, as we see what God is still writing, as we see the story that God is telling. Whose story will win? Let him be the storyteller in your life.